Hello, you beautiful little marketing bees. You're tuned into episode 88 of the Marketing Buzzword Podcast.
This is the Marketing Buzzword Podcast, the podcast where we dissect the world's most common marketing buzzwords. Hold on tight. We are about to fly around the beehive to see the latest buzzwords that stuck to the marketing bees.
Hello again and welcome back to the Marketing Buzzword Podcast. This is the podcast which helps you to understand what all these business and marketing buzzwords actually mean and how they can be helpful or not going forward. I'm your host Ben Roberts, and in this show I'm the marketing bee in charge of making sure I can get on the right guests and ask the right questions to make sure that these words and phrases actually make sense. In today's show, we're going to make sense of the buzzword Marcomms. So Marcomms. And before we do this, I need to remind you that this podcast is powered by Talkative. Talkative is a company that brings together live web chat, voice calling, video calling, and co-browsing together in one package embedded within your website. This lets you and your company to truly engage your customers, offer quick and effective resolutions to questions, and improve the customer experience. You can find out more at talkative.uk. And as always, I'm really keen to get your feedback, your reviews on iTunes, any buzzwords you want me to cover. Really interested. So please do drop me a line, use hashtag marketing buzzword anywhere or at Roberts_Ben_M on Twitter. Now, that's more than enough from me. It's time to introduce this week's guest. And this week's expert buzzword bee is an amazing woman called Helen Reynolds. So Hel Reynolds is a respected social media trainer, teaching corporate comms and marketing pros the latest and the best creative strategies and tactics. She has bags of PR and social media awards to her name, the most recent being from the 2018 UK Social Media Marketing Awards. You can join her free Comms Creative Club, a newsletter, readers and Facebook group where Hel is on a mission to get people feeling creative, fearless and proud of their work. She also loves to draw cartoons, chat to cats that live on her road, and binge watch repeats of the sitcom Frasier, which is actually brilliant. So really looking forward to this. This is the perfect person I could get on to talk about Marcomms and that blend of marketing and communications. So, that's more than enough from me. Let's get on with the show. Hi, Helen, and welcome to the podcast.
Hiya, how are you?
I am so good. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm in my office and I've got a spare hour, so it's absolutely lovely to chat to you.
Oh, no, the pleasure is absolutely all mine. I think this is some things, we live so close to each other, but actually it's really hard to actually find that in the beautiful, sunny Newport. Which it's actually, no, it's not sunny actually, it's grey, it's pretty standard, but I was trying to, I just realised, I'll try and sell Newport while we're here, and it didn't work.
It's sunny by Newport standards, let's put it that way. But it is weird that I don't think I've ever met you in Newport. I saw you in Newcastle,
yeah,
I saw you in Cardiff.
Just anywhere else.
Anywhere but Newport. That is a classic sign you're from Newport, when you don't want to be in Newport.
Yes, there's so many people as well that I've known that are from Newport, and I've met. It took ages. It took me like a year and a half to actually meet them in Newport, and it was usually meeting people from elsewhere. But here we're connected now, and we're talking, which is awesome. And today's topic is one that is of a particular fascination of mine. So the buzzword we're looking at today is called Marcomms. And now Marcomms isn't necessarily a new word. It's a word that's been around for ages. I remember learning about it in university and even in potentially even business studies and like GCSEs maybe. But it's a term that people I find get really confused and don't know what Marcomms is. And actually, I think we're going to talk about this and dive into this in a little bit more detail. But the difference between marketing and communications and actually how Marcomms sort of tries to bring them together. So to sort of kick this off, Helen, I'm going to ask you, what exactly is Marcomms from your experience, and sort of how does it play into, can you utilise it in a modern sort of 2019 way?
Ooh, I like this. It was a good question. Well, I'm going to talk about it from my point of view, and I guess I'll be really interested to hear about yours, because you've just mentioned that you studied this, and I went into the job of comms in my very early 20s, and I'd always planned to be a journalist. And I took this temp job to try and get me the money to go on and do a postgrad in journalism in comms. And I loved it and I stayed there. So my experience is a lot about communications, working in a communications environment. And once I got into that job as a press officer, so entirely doing media relations in the first couple of years of my job, I then took a CIPR diploma qualification. So I took this course, which was about being a professional public relations professional, and another buzzword, public relations. And I think it's really interesting because I'll talk about Marcomms in a second, but you can't really talk about it without talking about comms and marketing and public relations. And they're all these, I think anyone who isn't a professional feels they're all interchangeable. They think they're all the same thing. Sometimes people will think public relations is just media relations, when it's actually this whole communications role and reputation building. And obviously marketing has a huge part to play in reputation. So all of this stuff is this kind of jumble when you get to the reality of corporate world, because you'll have, let's say I started my career in local government, and you had the communications team and you had some marketing officers around that they weren't in the same team. You had people that called us PR, people that called, like, nobody really had these defined roles around it. So Marcomms to me is trying to bring all of the communications functions that involve getting results for the organisation through communication into one team. I suppose I see it in that context of it's about who's in the room and who's got what skills to do what. And those functions can be anything from advertising to media relations to social media to email marketing, all of that stuff. It fits together, and it seems really weird to me that you would have any kind of organisation that would separate communications and marketing. And Marcomms is that way of going, no, we believe they sit together. Graphic designers and press officers should be in the same room. People that do amazing insights work into audience research should be in the same room as the people that are amazing copywriters. And for me, it means that blend of all of the skills together, learning from each other in the same, or working for the same objectives.
Do you think it's one of those things where that they're separated out because the way that people perceive how PR is measured is different to how marketing is measured, and actually there are differences in terms of actually how they judge. So people, by separating out the teams, they have this team, this comms team has this number of this a set of objectives, and marketing is that. So it's quite easy for people to see, okay, this is marketing's role, this is comms role. Is that why? Do you think that's a reason why people would separate them out, or is that a reason that actually an excuse is used to keep them away from each other? Because I guess when you bring in a team, actually comms and marketing require certain different styles of people. I think there are some people that blend naturally across both, but actually you find people who are either very heavily weighted towards the comms route, some people are very heavily weighted towards the marketing route, and actually it's hard to get them to find, especially even high-level managers that can understand both. And that's almost why they kept separately, because there's a lack of maybe understanding from the top down that actually although they're measured quite differently, they can also be measured the same. Does that make sense from where I'm coming from?
It does, and I think that perception is why they're separate, but I think it's a wrong perception, and that kind of, like, the measurement should be all aligned to meeting certain objectives. Like, everyone should be working towards the same thing. And if you've got someone because I'd say someone who's skilled in comms is good at the communication and the shaping of messages, but also internal influencing. So a lot of the organisations I work with would be either big, complex organisations that might be for profit, or I work a lot with the public sector and government organisations. And if you're communicating, like if all you do is work for the objectives that are set for you, then you can't deliver back great insights. And I think the comms role is often about having a seat at the table with senior execs and going, include me from the start. I've got some insight to give you that will shape how we communicate as an organisation. And marketing can have a role in some of that research that helps you to deliver that insight. But also it's much more about reputation and scoping out the future for that organisation. And I think they need to be together. They have to be together, because you can't get amazing results and you can't have a true understanding of what the future looks like for your organisation without both being together.
And if you were to find a way then of, say, blending this marketing and communications and into one team, who becomes the natural leaders within that team? Would it be the comms team who are driving a lot of the messaging and stuff, or would you say the strategy comes still from the marketing element and the comms is the distribution of that? How does that actually work in together in terms of who's actually driving it forward? Because I can see actually you look at it and go, okay, marketing maybe look at some of the maybe where you blend stuff. The marketing comms is the wording. In terms of the content creation, there's be a lot of blend. But who's actually driving that forward? The comms team who are outreaching it, the marketing who may be doing more of the strategy side of things in terms of the advertising. Who really takes the lead? And maybe that's why. Is that a reason why people do keep them separate? Because it's trying to understand. No one knows who's necessarily responsible for what. How do you see that? Because I guess you've worked in a lot of teams where this could be an issue.
Yes, and it's funny you should say that, because you come from a marketing background and I'd say I come from a comms background with some delving now and some discovery around marketing.
This is why we didn't meet in person, because it would have ended up in some sort of fist fight, Helen, and I definitely would have lost.
But it's fantastic because it reminds me of when I studied my Chartered Institute of Public Relations diploma, which is like a postgrad strategic level qualification. I can remember coming out of that thinking, we're amazing. We're the strategic leaders. We do everything that is good. And marketing are just the people that do ads. And we do the strategy and they're the deliverers of it. And then now the more I learn about marketing, the more that marketing gets that message of comms, just wang out the odd Facebook post and maybe they might do a nice bit of copy. And there's this massive division between the two disciplines. It's because I looked into the CIM qualifications at the same time as I did, I was looking, this is like, I'm an old woman. So this is a good 11, 12 years ago that I even did this qualification. But it is fascinating to see the differences in perception. If we, as I think, disciplines that fit together perfectly are having these differences in perceptions about what we do within the organisation, we have some kind of rivalry about who does the best work. Imagine how hard it is for non-professional people who don't know anything about either of us. Imagine what they think we do. Like, we just don't know. And I think we need some kind of loving. We need some bridge. Like a conference where we throw away our differences and make sweet comms and marketing love, because it's just unbelievable how nobody seems to talk about this issue, about the fact that we both think we're better than each other, and we need to be learning from each other and appreciating some of the absolute same work that we do. Actually, I think marketing and comms do the same work. There's a huge amount of middle ground of things that we do exactly the same, and learning from each other. I think marketing can learn a lot around the internal influencing and leadership side from comms, and comms needs to really understand that very clear marketing focus on funnels and models and outcomes, which I think both sides have brilliant parts to play. And that's where Marcomms, as your buzzword, is brilliant, because to me it feels like a marriage rather than two separates.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating thing that you've touched on there. I think if we take it really a bit further back to when actually we're starting to learn in the academic world about business and communications, I think if we go back to mostly probably university level, it's almost like marketing and communications are almost separate from the start. Whereas it's quite clear to see when someone says marketing, they do a module on accounting or finance, quite clearly they're quite separate. But actually, marketing and comms almost seem to be separated quite early, and there seems to be a lack of. I remember when I did my marketing degree, it was focused on marketing. There was maybe a module on sort of PR, and it was like, these are publics are people that care about a thing, and this is who you should write a press release. And it's like, okay, but there was actually a lack of understanding. It's almost like they didn't really interact much. We didn't interact much with the people who were specialising in PR. And maybe that's where the rivalry comes on, because they're so close, but yet they're taught separately. So even if they're taught the same things, they're taught them in a slightly different way. So neither of them quite understand what each other are. And I guess once you have form those divisions really early on, it's much harder to then build those bridges later, especially if someone's been doing marketing for 10, 15 years, to try and get them to understand, actually, no, PR is very similar. No, it's not. I've never done PR. I've always done marketing, or I've always done comms. And it's trying to go, actually, look, let's use social media as the medium. Actually, that is almost bringing marketing and communications closer than ever before, and in customer service as well. In comms and marketing, rarely is customer service ever mentioned until you get to the real world, and then you're like, hang on, surely part of your comms is actually working with the customer service team, and your marketing is to work with customer service. And you know what? You've got a joint medium of social media. If you didn't work together, now you're being forced to because of this amazing medium that we have.
Well, it just goes to show, I suppose, as well, around how, because I teach on the CIPR diploma, so I teach some students with the CIPR diploma, and I obviously think it's very valuable, and the academic side of things and the theory is brilliant. But it does show that massive divide between the theory and the practice, between all of those three disciplines, really. If you think of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way of putting it, but it's kind of like, it's dated. Some of the theory is dated by the time it gets into a textbook. And I love how social media is kind of bringing us all together, because we all know we need a piece of it, and we're all much more willing to learn from each other as disciplines. But the reality of when you get into an organization, whether you're a consultant or I now train people and do a bit of consulting. I'm not an in-house member of staff. But the reality of when you get in there is, you just have to work it out. You just have to work it out yourself. And the theory is a lovely grounding that gives you some sense of direction, but it's not actually the way that you practice. It's not like, I bet when you did your degree, I bet the people that you remember, the academic people that you quoted, are different from mine. So mine are like Brinigan Hunt. Like I could list off all of these. I wouldn't say they're dusty academics, but they're like, I could list off all of these academics who I know their theory inside out, but I very rarely apply that theory to my work, because it's just it's just a way of learning. It's not a way of practicing. And I think that's where Marcomms comes in. It is a practice. It's not a topic for learning, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is, I think we probably both know, I don't know if you know Peter Sumpton, who teaches on who does a bit of CIM training, and he talks a lot about, oh, you don't know him, I have to introduce you to Peter. Yeah. But essentially looking at that, actually the theory, and actually doing this a lot, this academia gives you actually a really solid foundation and a base in which to build your knowledge on. But again, this is where the thing is, marketing and comms are taught completely separate theories. So how can they possibly, because they're not, there's a lack of joint theory. So how could they straight away from the early stages, you're going on two completely different mindsets. To try and bring people back together, there's a lack of understanding where the common ground is. And I think that's something that's interesting. So something I want to move on is, because I know you've got a course, and obviously you come from a comms background, and you've now set up a course. So can you talk a little bit about your course, and actually maybe where that will potentially help people in terms of actually practical uses, in terms of actually practically improving their Marcomms and their communications throughout their organisation?
Yes, I'd be happy to. It's funny because you were talking about the how social media is kind of bringing us together. We can see where we all have a place there, and we're all trying to work it out. And I spent so long doing social media as part of my comms. So I specialise in social media, right from back in the day when I was the UK's first council on MySpace. That is, I know I don't look old enough. But
good old days of MySpace and Bebo, and those are the days.
God, yeah, I was even on Friendster at one point. So I've been specialising in social media as I go along, and eventually, once I'd done that for enough in-house, I went on to work with other organisations, and now I train. And I train solely on how to make engaging social media. So for me, it feels really normal comms, because comms is about reputation, it's about insight to your audiences, it's about segmenting and really understanding your audiences and creating content that will help you to achieve whatever objective you want. And as I've been doing this over the years, I've really learned that the only way that you achieve objectives by using social media is not by asking people to do your thing, whether it's a public health message, just telling people stop smoking in various different ways, or in a private organization trying to sell your stuff. I realized that the comms grounding in publics and community building is the only way to do this. So you build a community so that they are absolutely fans of yours and dying to hear about your product or your messages. And it was interesting because the more I got into this, the more I started to get into marketing, because I think marketing have a better way of describing this phenomenon. I think we both do it. All the disciplines do it and are beginning to realize that's the only way you do social media effectively. But marketing has a clearer, more direct and specific way of describing this, I think. Even when it comes to sales funnels, I think that is something that comms people don't like. You can't use a sales funnel in the same way on social media, but you certainly use some similar process of building communities.
Yeah, it's less of the funnel still applies in terms of maybe organization of your own content, organization of your own thoughts. Okay, if I put something like this is creating awareness. This is actually helping people convert. This is helping retain people. This is helping giving people more information, whatever it is. But it's the understanding that actually people don't necessarily move straight down from awareness to information. That actually people can come in at different stages, different times. People have already done their research elsewhere, and then they come on to social media, and then you're just literally the conversion element of it. So I think that's where I agree. Marketing is better in that sense, and it's only got better recently. I think actually as well. I think for a long time it wasn't very good.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's very good at this actually, because really, especially when you're in an in-house job. But actually, no matter who you are, if you're in comms or marketing, there is an expectation that your job is to sell, is to push a message of some description, and that's where some of the stuff around influence internally works out, because you have to do a lot of work to get your chief exec to acknowledge that if you put a very engaging post out, you don't have to have a call to action on that post, that in itself that will help to increase your algorithms, increase your reach through using the algorithms. And then so when you are pushing a message, more people see it, and all of that kind of stuff involves a good relationship with your senior leaders in that organization or the person who's commissioned you. So I found this out when I went out, and so I'll tell you my situation before I get to the course itself. I have a chronic health condition which is called psoriatic arthritis, and the medication I'm on means that I really shouldn't pick up illnesses and things like that, because my immune system's compromised, and it just makes me tired. Yeah. So I was going around the country doing lots of classroom training in-house with organisations, loving it, great feedback, loving my life already, but gradually finding myself getting tired, like physically tired, and mentally I want to do more. So I thought I'll try online classes, because the online classes mean that I can train more people in one go. And I don't have to travel, so it takes that little extra bit of time out. And I started to really understand my customer. So when I'm doing classroom training, understanding how online courses could help them. And in the main, most people were saying, I just don't have time to take a whole day out of my and then sometimes when you're training people, an emergency will happen, and then like 3 of them have to go and leave and deal with it. So doing 2 hours a week over 12 weeks is a lot easier for them. And I joined a business club, Janet Murray's business club, and she's much more about marketing than I realised when I joined it. I thought it was about growing my business.
Well, she came from a PR background as well and went transitioned to that.
Yeah, and similarly, she went from journalism to PR, to media relations, PR, to now broadening this out to this much more marketing thing. So I joined her club, and the first thing when I got on a call with her is like, she's like, how big's your email list? And I was in total comms and social media. Well, I can tell you how many, I've got an amazing engaged audience on Twitter. I've got like thousands of followers, and people are like, I've got the right audience constantly talking to me all the time. And it wasn't until she said that about the email list, and it's like, I knew I had a community there that loved everything that I was doing. I get tons of engagement, but I didn't know how to convert that into sales properly. And it wasn't until I learned that thing about just actually all I've done in the last 2 years is just build an email list. But that's had a huge impact on my business, massive. And it was a little bit like I thought, I'm teaching all of this stuff, but I'm not doing something. Like, I need to start teaching what I'm learning myself is working for me and integrating that into the comms mix. So there's no way I can teach communications, social media, without making them aware that sometimes you might need to have some kind of email or some other kind of supporting work that helps you with that.
Yeah.
And not to say that comms doesn't deal with emails, marketing and that kind of, you'll often get comms teams that do emails and that kind of stuff, but just bringing in without, like, I need to push my agenda around social is amazing and it gets you amazing results long term, brilliant reputation and community building. But in order to get that to convert for you to actually mean something so that your bosses love you, and there are some other things that you can do that will help you do that. So my course is about engaging social media content, because it's surprising how easy it is to get into a rut with that. So you kind of go, I need to make a video about this. I'll just get my phone out and I'll film someone talking about it. Or,
you see a lot of people, it's this wobbling head syndrome, I'm starting to call it now, where since LinkedIn video has come around, they're just videos of people's heads.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And it's like, okay, I get it, because it's one of the things, there's marketers are especially good and awful at jumping on bandwagons. Now, LinkedIn Live is like one of the latest ones now. We're starting to see more and more people do LinkedIn Lives, and the more we try and sound different, the more we end up trying to sound the same. We're like, oh, someone's doing, like, I saw some stats about podcasting recently, and the amount of new podcasts. So I'm lucky, I was slightly ahead of the bandwagon. This is even my second podcast. So it's just like interesting to see how all this is really developing, because marketing are great at jumping on that. But I think comms, from my perspective, seems to be a little bit more reserved, and it seems to be a little bit more prim and proper. And this is the way it always has been done. Marketing's like, new thing, let's go and do new thing.
Yeah, and I think where Marcomms is brilliant is where you can bring those attitudes and they enhance each other. Because I think the shiny new syndrome thing means that not often, but it can be prone to not really having any strategy behind it. You're just trying it out, which I know I'm a trier-outer. But if you're doing a video on LinkedIn, let's say, because those wobbly heads are everywhere. Sometimes I just think, who's your audience? What are you trying to say? What's the value here? And how much prep did you put into this video? Because, like, you're in your car and it looks like you're lying down on a seat, and you know what I mean. Like, there are some kind of general things that I see on LinkedIn, and I just think,
what are you trying to get? Why? Well, what is your why? Have you do you have a why? What, and not even why. It's like, what do you want people to get out of this? Do you want? I'm all for raw and authentic video, and I think that's a buzzword in itself, authenticity, because authenticity, I think, is kind of bollocks in the sense that people are trying to be authentic. Now, it's just like, I don't know. I love marketing. I mean, I work in marketing. I have so many friends that are marketers, but marketers are so ironic. It's like, let's work harder to be more authentic. Right, okay, that sentence is literally a contradiction. And then the other ones are like, we need to be more human. Let's get a chatbot on our website. Okay, that's fine. And they're just this. We're full of these ironies, and that's where I love the comment. This is why, I guess, for me as well as a marketer, I'm going the other way to you. And this is, I guess, how our paths really crossed, is because I'm trying to understand more about the comms world. So we're both now members of the PRCA in Wales. And that was for me coming from a marketing background, going, I want to know more about the comms and bring and blend from that side. Whereas you're coming from the comms side and moving a little bit more towards the marketing space. And that's how basically our paths have really crossed. Even though we were both in Newport and literally like 5 minutes away from each other, our paths had never crossed before.
I lost you.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
No, I am here.
Yes, I think that is fascinating, because my perception of marketing from the stuffy side is, wow, you guys are fun. Like, ooh. But for instance, when we both went to what they call Andrew and Pete. Andrew and Pete. I always get them mixed up with Adam and Joe. Andrew and Pete. When I went to that conference, obviously I've seen their stuff and I think they're great, but I was like, I'm actually entertained. This is like an actual piece of entertainment when they are on stage, and how much more engaging that was. Absolutely brilliant. But then sometimes you will see people who are so razzmatazz and not that much substance that it makes me go back into my comms reserve, like, oh God, no, kind of thing.
Yes.
And from the comms world, like, my reputation in the comms world is someone who's not very formal, and I'd be on the edge of wacky, I suppose. But in the marketing world, I'm nothing. Like, I'm just boring middle-aged woman. So I just think it's like there is a definite difference in tone when you look at marketing conferences, marketing and how they speak to each other. Twitter chats are brilliant for this. Look at how marketers talk to each other and look at how communications people talk to each other. There's almost like comms people are having a professional off. Like, I'm more professional and I'm not very professional and I'm very meaningful. And whereas marketers are like, who can be funniest?
Yes.
And who can get the most retweeted? It's like a different kind of culture. And I love the idea of those cultures merging, because I think there's a bit of good in both of them and a bit of get over yourself in both of them.
Absolutely love that. And so then I think that's getting really like a really good point now, where I sort of want to start wrapping this up with actually sort of trying to summarize that. So from your experience then, Helen, how can we bridge that gap then? How can we really make Marcomms more of a thing and less of a them and us? How can we make Marcomms work? Do you have any specific ideas or tips or experiences that you found that people would go, this is actually a common mistake that you should look to avoid, or anything like that?
I think the common mistake is to get, and actually this isn't just about Marcomms, but the common mistake that most people make is to get so buried in their one discipline that you miss out on all the amazing learning and perspective difference that you get from other disciplines. So I know when I was in comms in a full-time job, I went to a conference called Open Tech, Total Tech conference. And I went with my mate because he went, this is going to be amazing, wait till you see it. And my mind was blown from all these different disciplines, talking about things from a different angle, talking about my things, but in a different way. And the same now, I'm in the marketing world and I'm like, whoa, this is a really interesting aspect on it. And I just think if you're in comms, you need to do that. If you're in marketing, you need to go to the comms conferences and the tech or anything you want. Tell you where I'm going to tomorrow, the Boring Conference. No, not tomorrow, the day after, Saturday. And it's a conference just about boring things. And I religiously go to it because you'll get people talking about bricks in detail and like the history of street lamps and how
this is even a thing is beyond me. I've never even heard, and how have I not heard about this?
I know, but it's like that weird thing of, I think if I could give any advice to any professional in marketing or comms, I would say do your best to open your mind to other ways of looking at things and other disciplines and how they see the world, because you start to bring in much more interesting perspectives to your work, and the ideas that you have are unbelievable. So I know that the work that I'm not famous. I wouldn't say I was the best person in the world, but the best work I've done has come from being inspired from other areas, from really open. Even if you work in marketing, have a look at #comms, start joining in some chats. If you work in comms, start looking at the marketing chats that happen. There's loads of them. Like, that's a really easy way in, and then you can start to look at the people, the schmoovers and the shakers. That what do they bring? I think my initial sticking my toe in the water for marketing was Gary Vee, and much as I've grown out of him, he gave me an education that I loved, and I think that was brilliant.
And that's the blend of where someone's really engaging, it doesn't necessarily come across with the huge amount of professional. I think he is quite a professional guy, but doesn't in some of his videos he can come across as just quite, he's going out there speaking, comes across that way, and that's not the way a comms person would present themselves.
No,
but Yeah, but you still learn a heck of a lot, and actually you learn more sometimes from engaging people than you do. I've been at conferences and events where someone is, they know their shit. This is a clever person, but the way they've delivered it makes you go, oh, and you're like, oh, it's really, I feel really bad because I want to learn, I want to know what you tell me, because you're obviously very clever. I find people, especially in the world of SEO and more technical areas, generally not as good performance on speaking. Some of them are brilliant, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are some brilliant people, but I found the higher percentage of people who I'm like, wow, this is technically very good, I'm sure, but God, it's hard to follow.
Yeah, and I don't think that professionalism in those areas, and it's the same with comms, doesn't often talk about supporting your individual development by doing public speaking. So in marketing, I think a lot of speakers in marketing have really found their groove because it is expected of them. And I think, again, with these other types of profession, especially when you've got the more introverted kind of more technical sides of things, or comms, where it's really about ethics and being seen to add value and all of these kind of pressures you've got on yourself to prove yourself as an industry. I think it can be that we haven't spent that time nurturing our own individual talents on how to communicate. It's all about the job, and you'll get that all the time in comms. It's all about the job. It's about what I do. It's not about how I say it.
Yes.
And fine, but that doesn't work in the real world, does it? If you want to get on, you need to be a good communicator for yourself and get people to trust you. And then, then you'll be able to take those risks that others wouldn't. Yeah,
and that's one of those difficult things, isn't it? You see a lot of business owners where they're very good at doing work for other people, but they're very poor at potentially promoting themselves. And it's one of those difficult things as people and individuals. We need to understand, actually, by promoting yourself, you are actually promoting your business and yourself and your personal brand. All ties back into the business. So even if and it's one of the big things I'm a big advocate of, is actually personal brands within a business environment. So for me, I've always worked for brands. I've never worked for myself. So for me, it's being able to show people that actually you don't have to be a freelancer. You don't have to run your own agency to have a personal brand. Actually, there's ways you can do this within businesses, and actually finding your own little thing that you can really clutch to, and it aligns with a company's goals. You can absolutely communicate and become synonymous with an area of comms or area of marketing that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, and it's that you're a great example of this. Of people will say, "Oh, I don't want to do it because I don't like promoting myself and blowing my own trumpet." Well, actually, you add value. Like, you give people value, so you don't have to go around blowing your own trumpet, because people will blow it for you because you gave them some value. And it's that weird thing of, in both, I think in all of these comms and marketing roles, you'll get people who tell you, like, they do amazing work at community building and not pushing messages down and being much more sophisticated in how they communicate, but they won't do it for themselves. They just go, no, because I don't want to shout about myself. Well, you don't shout about your company, so why are you saying that? Like, you don't have to do that for you either. It's a thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Helen. It's been absolutely fascinating. I love looking at this world of Marcomms and seeing, actually, from your experiences, of how we can blend marketing and communications, and actually how there's so much we can learn off each other. And we need to, again, I've been to so many marketing and business conferences now where we talk about breaking down the silos, but I think this is one of those should be one of those ones that should be an easier nut to crack, but it's almost got to start from the really early days of people in marketing and comms. So when people go into businesses, it's trying to crush those perceptions of the industry really early on. So thank you so much for your time today, Helen. It's been an absolute education. I've made so many notes on my little bit of paper here, so there's plenty of stuff. I'm sure everyone's got loads of stuff out of it.
Oh, thank you so much. I love chatting to you always. So hopefully I'll see you in Newport or somewhere else in the country, and we'll have another chat.
Oh, absolutely. But before I let you go, Helen, you thought you might have got away with this. I need to ask you the one question I ask everyone at the end of each of these episodes, and it is, what other marketing buzzwords are you loving or hating right now, Helen? What is grinding your gears and going to make you go, please stop using this term, it's driving me insane, and making you sort of want to go into one of those padded cells? Or what's something you're like, yes, I love this. This is, for me, this is something that's a really hot topic right now, something that I'm absolutely loving either doing or talking about.
Right. Well, the first one, I don't know if this will be controversial or not, but the first one I'm going to say, the grinding my gears cannot stand, is pay to play. And it's not so much about the term itself, but what it implies. So I think a lot of people, particularly with Lush, deciding to go to influencer social media strategy and just basically not use their main channels anymore. There was this discussion around, because you have to pay to play now. If you're going to use Twitter or Facebook, you can't fight the algorithms. You've got to pay to be in people's grills. And that really bugs me because it's not true. If you're constantly selling a message, pushing products, talking about yourself at all times, of course you're going to have to pay to get people to see you because nobody wants to read that. Nobody wants to view those videos, just you talking about your own business. If you've got a great engaged community, you will necessarily be talking about things they're interested in. Therefore, algorithms will respond to all of that engagement and increase your reach. And this leads me on to my buzzword that I like. And I don't know if I'd call it a buzzword, but it's certainly jargon. Audience segmentation. So this is what we do on our course, really. It's just understanding that the best content comes from really understanding your audience and not trying to talk to everyone. And in fact, not only not talking to everyone, but segmenting your audience to the point where you're talking to the fewest people possible who can help you achieve what you want and having a properly meaningful conversation with those people rather than just telling everyone what you think they might want to hear and blanding out your message so that it tries to appeal to everyone and actually appeals to nobody.
And that's definitely a case of where the term less is more is so applicable. It's spending more time with less people but then getting more results. So it's less people but actually more results from those less people instead of trying to get more people and then getting less results. Less is more, not more is less, or whatever, something like that. Anyway, it all makes sense, really.
Yeah, it is. It's like trying to make friends with 1,000 people in a room rather than just trying to find 3 people that you've got something in common with that will actually help you, like, go to the cinema with or whatever. So you've got some shared interests and you can have proper conversations.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely love that. I think that's one we've not had on the show before, so that's really, really interesting. And I'm glad you brought that one up because that's something I've not thought about, and I think it's definitely something, a potential topic for the future episode of the show.
Yes, brilliant, lovely, bring it on.
Well, thanks so much for your time again, Helen. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you. It's been brilliant.
Bye.
Bye.
As we discussed in this episode, all too often the worlds of marketing and communications are seen as separate entities, and it's really difficult to blend the two. And it's trying to find out all these different ways and methods that we can break down these silos and understanding actually there's more that binds us and divides us. And it's trying to understand the best ways that marketing and communication can work together. I love the advice that Hel provides in this episode because for me it really helps to summarize what Marcomms really is and how marketing and communication can work together and some of the common pitfalls that are often associated when marketing and communications work together and who's leading, whose views what is what job. And I think it's absolutely fascinating to look at the differences between marketing and communications. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting world that we're heading into. So if you have enjoyed the show, please do leave a review on iTunes. Please do let me know if you have any feedback as well. I'm always loving to hear what you think of the guests and what they've been talking about throughout the course of each episode. So thank you very much for listening. I'm back next week with a really, really big guest. Goodbye.
This podcast is part of the You Are the Media Network.